There's a huge furore over lateral entries in bureaucracy. Is this a new development though? Let's have a look. In fact, must remember, it's just about the third big U-turn of the Modi government. First, a UPSC advertisement for lateral entry into the bureaucracy. All senior posts, 45 posts in all, joint secretary, director, deputy secretary, across 24 ministries that the government claims needs expertise, with no provision for reservations. That's when the opposition cried foul, called it an assault on Dalits, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and OBCs. It was not just the opposition. Possibly the big point for the government came when Chirag Paswan, ally and a union minister, criticized the NDA government's move for lateral entry as completely wrong. The government ministers who first went into an all-out attack at the Congress and opposition, accusing them of amnesia, soon had to change their song and the tune. The Department of Personnel and Training said reservation policies don't apply to lateral entry appointments because they're individual appointments and not group appointments. Let's look at the fields where these lateral entry invites were sent out for. And it's important because the government has claimed, the government sources here have claimed that this is an attempt, according to government sources, to bring in a fresh perspective to bureaucracy, to bring in an expertise for specialized fields and to manage the crunch in the bureaucracy. So what were the fields where this was opened up for? You had semiconductors and electronics, environment policy and law, digital economy, fintech, cybersecurity, investment in economic affairs, shipping, science and technology, economic, commercial, industrial under steel ministry, renewable energy, policy and plan, national disaster management authority. The government said all of these were critical. They were specialized field. There needed to be fresh perspective. There needed to be expertise. But as they ordered a rollback, this is what they claimed. The government has claimed now, according to sources, that they are for transparent and institutionalized lateral entry. Modi government wants consistency with social justice and reservation. No provision for quotas in lateral entry. Clear. Government to bring in reservation in lateral entry, and lateral entry is only for contract people, no pensions and other perks. They've claimed this is the way they have rolled it back, essentially to undo the wrong that had happened under the Congress-led regime. But what's the history to lateral entries? Where does it go back to? Let's quickly have a look at it. First Administrative Reforms Commission, 1996, chaired by Morarji Desai, did specifically advocate lateral entry, but highlighted the need for specialized skill within the bureaucracy. Then you have the Second Administrative Reforms Commission, 2005, chaired by Veerappa Moily. Idea gained traction during 2004 to 2009. It was strongly endorsed, stressed for the need for specialized knowledge. In fact, the Reforms Committee went on to say that they must hire from PSUs, private sector and academia, bid to improve policy implementation. It was in 2017 that the Niti Aayog recommended this approach in its 3-year action agenda move to enhance expertise, move to bring fresh perspectives to central government. Did it start under the Modi government though? Just let's look at some of the names that have come up as lateral entries. You of course have Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who was appointed as the economic advisor in 1979. Vijay Kelkar, appointed finance secretary in 1998. Bimal Jalan, appointed finance secretary in 1991. Shankar Acharya, appointed as CEA in 1993. Rakesh Mohan, appointed deputy governor of RBI in 2002. Arvind Virmani, appointed as CEA in 2007. Ram Vinay Shahi, appointed as Power Secretary in 2002. And then, of course, you have the government going ahead and quoting many names. Homi Bhabha, father of India's nuclear program. The founding director of Atomic Commission was the inaugural Secretary of Department of Atomic Energy under Jawaharlal Nehru. M.S. Swaminathan, seen as the main architect of Green Revolution in India. This was under Indira Gandhi, and he was appointed the Director General of ICAR, Secretary to Government of India. Sam Pitroda, everybody knows him as the technocrat, the very popular technocrat under the Rajiv Gandhi era. In fact, he did give up at one point Indira Gandhi's invitation to join government and founded the C.Dot. You have Raghuram Rajan, economist, worked with IMF as the chief economist and was eventually made the honorary economic advisor to Government of India in 2008, became the chief economic advisory in the year 2012 and eventually became the RBI governor. Manmohan Singh was first professor of economics appointed at the Delhi School of Economics in 1970s, was the chief economic advisor and financial secretary in 1982, became RBI governor under Indira Gandhi, was made the CEA of Government of India in 1972 under Indira Gandhi. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, as I said earlier, worked at World Bank after studying abroad, held secretary-level posts under successive Congress governments, was made chairman of Planning Commission, was given secretary-level posts in the year 1979 under Manmohan Singh government. So what is this row over lateral entry? Is it quota versus merit in a new avatar? Who better to explain to this than the experts? So let's just go straight to them at this point. I'm being joined by Hitesh Jain, who's a senior advocate, Dr. Ajoy Kumar, who's with the Congress, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, who's former senior deputy director for Labasna, as well as Varun Khullar, who's a former bureaucrat, Ministry of Defense. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Well, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, with your years in the services, let's just start straight with what's the point of view of a bureaucrat to look at what's unfolding?
Okay, so good evening to all. And at the outset, I think it's a good news that the lateral entry proposal has been withdrawn. See, the thing is, there are two issues. One is whether we should have three, whether we should have lateral entry off and on, or whether we should have lateral entry as a regular source of recruitment to senior civil services, and thirdly, reservation in the matter. So as far as the reservation goes, once there is a regular recruitment in a systematic manner, year after year, then reservation has to prevail. And that is a settled matter. In my mind, it's a very settled matter. Number two is the question number one, whether we should have lateral entry off and on. So depending on the circumstances, occasionally government can take outsiders on cadre posts, occasionally, but not on a regular basis, because regular basis, there is central staffing scheme which allows the management of cadre in a particular way. So, and thirdly, permanent, year after year, batches after batches, we can engage people, recruit people on contractual basis and give them posts which are meant under central staffing scheme, which is a very structured arrangement, And I mean, you have to go beyond all these things. You have to go beyond in the sense that how the government of India has to be managed in a federal setup, in a country like ours, which is a union of states, and in the states. And in that situation, the IAS officers who are primarily born on state cadres and come to government of India, Central Secretariat, to serve it on deputation. You see, there is a kind of linkage between the central governance, central government governance and state government governance. And this is provided by the IAS officer. This is how it is designed. Structure is designed. Periodic training arrangements are there. So it is another matter that posts are vacant, many posts are not getting filled up, and therefore there is a shortage, which all can be resolved. But this does not justify regularly filling up regular posts through contractual assignments on senior level positions.
Okay, Varun Khullar, do you agree with him or do you have a different perspective? Considering you were also in the services, you still train aspirants to get into the services. Is it just about reservations? Is there another point of view?
Right. So one view of various people is that we need fresh blood in the bureaucracy, right? And sometimes what happens is across time we lose that in the bureaucrats who have been in service for a very long period of time. So therefore, especially in areas like emerging technologies, let's say you're looking for somebody to manage a new treaty, maybe like the Chemical Weapons Convention initially as well, right? And other places where you require critical minerals for that matter, or let's say cryptocurrencies. So I need a specific joint secretary who would actually handle cybercrime, cryptocurrencies, things like these. Now, perhaps lateral entry makes sense. It is required actually, but as Sudhir said, that perhaps it's not a regular entry, right? And if it's like regularly done, perhaps it should be much more transparent. And why not train people within the system? That's another view, which obviously has rightly pointed out.
So,
but I still say
you are essentially saying that it's not regularly done. As of now, you don't see it as something that has been regularized, is being done often. You don't see that.
It has never been done regularly. It has always done specific. So a lot of times what has happened is from the academia, somebody who's an expert at a certain thing has been shifted to the bureaucracy to add the expertise in a certain area. So there it is really fruitful, really useful, and it would be, an asset to our country, and we require such people definitely. On the other hand, obviously, fresh blood, that's another viewpoint, which is always seen that, should we get people from the private sector, expertise, make bureaucracy more efficient? There's obviously a systemic change which is required in the bureaucracy in terms of efficiency. And that's something that, I think every government has tried doing and perhaps failed, right? So that's one way of looking at it. The other part, obviously, is whether lateral entries are successful. And in my eyes, some of them have been successful, but on the whole, if I look at it, lateral entries have never been really successful in, in the government of India, because obviously it's very hard to work with the government, I would say, right? So even if you take people from the outside, I've not really seen them really doing a great job. But yes, great exceptions obviously have been Sam Petroda, Nandan Nilekani.
Okay, that's a matter of a different debate, possibly, or we'll look into it in a bit. But Dr. Sudhir Krishna, very quickly, to what Mr. Varun Khullar is saying right now, do you also see this as from what it was, say, a decade and a half ago, and the various instances that have been mentioned of lateral entries, to what it has become, say, over the last decade? Do you still see it as an instance of not being regularized as Mr. Varun is seeing it?
Absolutely. The thing is, what was happening earlier was occasionally getting an expert from outside to man certain positions for a specific time frame. Now here you see, and the joint secretary level position was not like that. See, the joint secretary, those who have worked in government of India, they will understand. Mr. Khullar will understand very nicely. You see, the thing is, working in government of India as a joint secretary in a federal setup like us is a very different position. It does not only require your subject matter specialization. You have to know how the governance of the country is, from panchayat to district level, state level, what is the governance mechanism, center-state relations, how do these work, parliament and government relationship, we have to understand different divisions, different wings of the government, how do you work with them? It's not a very simple in our setup. It is not like European countries, which are small countries and very easy to manage in a different framework.
As a more regularized effort, a more frequent effort to get in lateral entries off late when you compare it to earlier, or do you still see it as exceptions?
No, it is regular. It is becoming regular, And in the 2018, it was done. Everybody tolerated as an exception. 2021, it was done. Now it is again 2023, and number is increasing. And there is no reason. The reasons given are shortage of officers. You fill up the post. Out of 6,500 positions of IAS officers, the cadre strength, 1,500 are vacant. Who prevents government from filling up these posts? You don't fill up the posts and then say there are vacancies.
Okay, very quickly to Mr. Hitesh Jain. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hitesh Jain. So you've heard two bureaucrats speak about this. How do you look at this? I mean, at the end of the day, do you say that what government was trying to attain here in terms of lateral entry saw a full stop or say a colon? Because was it because of the opposition or was it eventually because of the ally turning horse?
See, I think we have heard the two former bureaucrats before me, and they are very clear that if you are going to institutionalize the lateral entry process, then there has to be certain process. And if you are going to institutionalize it on a regular basis, and there has to be a reservation, you cannot have a backdoor policy. And as if you want to go beyond the headlines, since your show says, and if you go beyond the headlines from the days of Nehru's to Indira Gandhi, I mean, right from the example of IG to Dr. Homi Baba, to Dr. Manmohan Singh himself,
Which we did.
to Montek Singh Ahluwalia.
I don't know whether you heard my introduction. Gave all of those examples.
Did you see any? So what was the? Yes, of course I saw that. So therefore I'm trying to point out that on an ad hoc basis, without following any policy, backdoor mechanism was followed. There was no reservation that was introduced in the lateral entry process. Formally, an attempt was made in 2005 by Virappa Moy to introduce the lateral entry process. At that time also there was no reservations that were provided in the lateral entry process. So therefore the question that needs to be asked is, who introduced the lateral entry process and why were the reservations not provided then? So at the end of the day, if we are very clear that if the lateral entry process is to continue, and if it has to continue, then it has to align with equity and the principles of social justice. I think that is the position that has been stated very clearly. There is no doublespeak. There is no hypocrisy. This is the position of the law, and this is the position in terms of recruitment the government of the day is going to follow. And insofar as the track record in Congress has an argument that, I mean, this is against the social justice, or we are not providing the reservations. All the examples that were cited before, and the backdoor policies, we saw no reservation
driving
process.
the whole system. Why did the government have to roll back?
One more example.
Sir?
I mean, if you are also speaking about... Well, I don't think it is rolling back. It is looking at the policy and clearly stating what the principles are going to be there. Where is the question of rollback? I mean, if you are going to follow on a regular basis, and if the government feels that there has to be a process, well, there are so many nuances, whether it's a single cadre, specialized cadre, if it is going to be all the processes are to be considered. And if there is if the process has to be in alignment with the Constitution. Okay. So if we are following the principles of Constitution and following the vision laid down by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, I don't see any problem. In fact, it is an affirmative statement that lateral process is here to stay, but it has to align with the principles of social justice. Plain and simple.
Okay. All right. Dr. Ajoy Kumar, so basically, you've heard the panelists right now, Mr. Hitesh Jain, say a very simple thing. They are trying to do something legally. What the Congress or the opposition-ruled governments in the past did was backdoor. How do you look at that?
Let me first of all clarify. I was a member of parliament, but I was also a civil servant before that. So, I've heard Mr. Jain, and the problem is, the amount of misrepresentation of information is very sad, and everybody's got a mobile phone and you can check on Google. 2021, the Bharatiya Janata government took 30 joint secretary and deputy secretary and director level positions. 2021. 2019, they took 7 people. They didn't have reservation at that time. And your capsule before the meeting was whether it's Homi Baba, whether it's Nandan Nilekani. Those are, at the top level. Whether it is President Kalam, it's always been a process with the Department of Space Exploration or Department of Atomic Energy. But the other positions never had this joint secretary. What is the great skill you need for a deputy secretary, you tell me? That you'll get some coin expert, a Bitcoin expert. This kind of bunkum you hear on your TV channels. You say Congress brought it. My first question to Mr. Jain is, sir, please stop. The Bharatiya Janata Party is blatantly an anti-affirmative action for a couple of reasons. University reservations. They brought a change in the rule of universities. Earlier, the universities of India, and that's a huge issue which is going to explode now. They backtracked it because they don't have the numbers. 2019, how did they take 30 people? They did without reservation. 2021. 2019, they took 7 people. And how many joint secretaries do you have in Government of India in that year? So, madam, and I'll tell you factually, in a year, you think there are more than 30 to 40 joint secretaries promoted from the director level in the government of India? No. So the amount they were taking was crazy. Then NTA chairman, again RSS BJP background, UPSC chairman. Problem is, man, you need to analyze all the lateral entry guys who have come in. And you will see that ABVP background, RSS background. I've given an example of the UPSC chairman. What was his background? The NTA chairman who refuses to go, Mr. Joshi. So the question again is, if there was some amount of research done on this nonsense which they're spewing on national TV. Universities, I'll tell you. In universities, there were 100 vacancies, 50% will go to the reserve people.
Okay, just a minute. We'll try and get Hitesh Jain back or a representative of BJP.
Madam, one sec.
No, I'll get back to you. I will come back to you, sir.
You need to understand. You need to understand the nuance of this. The nuance of this is important. If you have 100 vacancies, you have 50 seats reserved. Now they release one department, history's got one vacancy. Obviously, it is unreserved. So they have made sure that SCs should have been 15%, they're less than 7% central universities. The tribals who should have been 8% are less than 2%. Ask Mr. Hitesh Jain, what kind of affirmative action is that? I want to know that how is SCs and STs 2% and 7% in the central universities? Forget joint secretaries, we'll come to that. That he needs to tell us. And they did it, we didn't do it. They brought that rule.
Okay, all right. Okay, Varun Khullar, as someone who was also in the bureaucracy, do you agree with the perspective that Dr. Ajoy Kumar is having? Do you agree that there is an issue in terms of the assessments of those who would be inducted into bureaucracy at the lateral level?
Right, because it's not really transparent. They really don't put out what cases have they actually hired.
But bureaucracy as such isn't transparent, isn't it?
Exactly, right. So the way, this thing is done, right? At least the UPSC takes an exam, right? There's a prelims, there's a mains, there's an interview, right? Now here, it's just an interview. And that can be as fake as possible, can be, they're on multiple rounds in the UPSC. Like if you go for a private sector job, you have multiple rounds, right? Okay, that doesn't really happen. In the previous era, what used to happen was that you used to work for the government for a bit, right? And they used to offer you a permanent job, right? It happened to a lot of our senior professors at IIM Calcutta as well, that, they actually worked with the government of India first, and then they were offered a position which is permanent in nature. So it was much more, after they had proven that they were good at it. Now here, you've just been given a job. And, as Sir pointed out, it's at a lower level. It's deputy secretary, at the end of the day. And he points out the fact that maybe, at that level, maybe a lateral entry is maybe not required, right? Maybe a senior level expertise is required from outside, but do you require at a level that they're hiring? Maybe not, right? So I would say that it is something that needs to be looked into.
No, but if you're looking at the sectors, let's just look at the sectors to what... Right, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, to what Mr. Varun has said, let's look at these sectors where these applications were invited for this time: semiconductors and electronics, environment policy and law, digital economy, fintech, cybersecurity, investment and economic affairs, renewable energy, National Disaster Management Authority. So firstly, as a point is being made, that do you require expertise at all levels in such departments, which are very, these are the departments that are also likely to shape the future course and the responses of a country, often seen as specialist in nature. Second question, reservation, no reservation. Even with reservation or even without reservation, how is lateral entry going to be gauged?
Well, I think let's answer the second question first, that reservation, I am quite clear. As long as we have bulk recruitment, we cannot just do some, tinkering or some window dressing of showing one post in one ministry and so on and so forth, and take away the provision of reservation.
Right.
So when we are making a bulk reservation recruitment, and that too year after year, then reservation has to apply. That issue is settled in my mind. I'm quite clear. Now coming back to the position, you see, every position in government of India has a different flavor and different responsibility. So joint secretary level is a very cutting edge level position. It is like fulcrum of the governance. And fulcrum of the governance, as you are showing here, the map or the picture of the service logo here, there are so many spokes. And the joint secretary is at the center, and he deals with, as I said earlier, he deals with the different ministries. He deals with the legal positions of the system. Government procedures are there. State government, because every government of India's program, 99 out of 100 government of India's programs have to deal with the state governments, and out of those 99, at least 98 will have to deal with the districts and the municipalities and the panchayats. So many spokes are there for a joint secretary to handle. You cannot bring a lateral entrant to joint secretary's position. He cannot discharge whatever may be. He may be a PhD, super PhD. It is not required there. He can be taken as a consultant for specialist work, but not to work as a joint secretary in the ministry. It is impossible. It won't work. And simply for the sake of argument, we can engage. But governance, if you see governance of the government, if you see that system, then it doesn't fit in. Yes, secretary level is a different position. Secretary level you can off and on occasionally, because that is a kind of superior level where the more of policy and more of visionary position, etc. It's not a fulcrum position in governance of the ministry. So there occasionally we can take. There also a person who is coming from outside in critical ministries, after some time he may not be able to do justice to the ministry. You have to deal with parliament, you have to deal with the minister, you have to deal with MPs individually at times, parliamentary committees, audit and so on. Multiple works are there. It is not simply glittering like. And lastly, I would say that we have got specialized cadres. We have got Indian Telecom Service. Brilliant people are there who have done masters in telecommunication, and even PhDs are there in that service. With some grooming, they can outshine. If you really want them, what kind of work you want, you should know. Every single Central Engineering Service, Indian Railway Service, Indian Railway Telecommunication Service. Services and services, Indian Trade Service, Indian Economic Service, Indian Forest Service. Wherever government requires specialists in environment, definitely they will get dozens of excellent Indian Forest Service officers who can be further groomed. There are arrangements for training. So I think we have to have trust in our bureaucracy. We have to find out their strength. We have to identify the weaknesses, work on weaknesses. That will be a more stable arrangement in this federal setup. India is a federal country, I said before. We have to work on in that framework. Not merely, it's not a small country and we have not advanced so much. We have a lot of ground to cover. Unlike developed countries, they have covered so much ground.
All right. I'm totally out of time, sir.
Yes.
Right. In fact, we don't have Hitesh Jain with us. So Dr. Ajoy Kumar, I'm Ajoy Kumar. I'm also going to come to you as a former bureaucrat who was part of the system as well. You represent the Congress. So in 2024, there's, of course, the whole thing about merit versus quota. Now, there's this whole jargon around quota which is going on. There's a whole furor political debate, social debate around quota. That's one part of it. But merit also being very crucial. Look at the machinery of Indian bureaucracy. Look at the years that are spent in the Indian bureaucracy. Look at the examinations that are taken. Look at the... what people boast of as the best joining these services. That's literally how the bureaucracy is seen even in 2024 India. And yet you are saying you don't have specialists there now as well as the earlier times. Is this then a failure of how the bureaucracy is functioning in the country? That you can't find merit in the system?
No, it's the failure of the government is the political leadership to set the agenda. The civil services execute the agenda. So, madam, the problem is we hold these politicians. I'm a politician too. I mean, how can they get away with it? What prevents the government from developing expertise in forestry or nuclear power by so many IT guys are there? The government, whether it's the prime minister or home minister, and it applies across everybody. It's our government or their government. The issues, I think, this merit versus quota.
I'm glad you say that. So you would ask the same question to the Congress as well. I mean, I'm just laying the platform there.
Definitely ask. No, they definitely will ask the same. See, we need to ask each other the same question. But this debate on merit versus quota is one of the most specious arguments. The UPSC the toppers have been from scheduled caste for so many years, from backward communities. What's this nonsense we keep spewing on the, the issue is not, it's the question of opportunities. If it's like 100 meters race and all the guys who are so non-quota people are saying that I'm starting at 90 meters and I have to run 10 meters. because I went to a public school, the best school. My parents could afford the best coaching. And the poor guy who's from the village, from a depressed community, has to start from -100. So it's a question of opportunity. I think the affirmative action has repeatedly shown. And the best example of affirmative action for all of you is politicians. You see the politicians which are coming from different backgrounds. It's a competitive space. They seem to be doing too well. There's no reservation, by the way, backwards in the parliament. But otherwise, SC/ST politicians have also have blazed a very beautiful trail. They've been extremely successful. So I think this argument is done by it. And last, most important, ma'am, 10% economic weaker section. Who gets that reservation? Who gets it? The general category people? Nobody keeps saying that's wrong. So look at the duplicity of all of us. So the duplicity is terrible. The 10% reservation for economic weaker section only goes to a particular section. It doesn't go for SC/ST, OBC. So that's a question. You need to do a separate show on that. We must get out of our duplicitous perspective.
Okay, so while I don't have a BJP spokesperson with me on the show anymore, and he was there for a while back, I guess one thing that I'll have to say is, while this has been rolled back for now, and there's a policy going to be framed for the panelists who have raised their concerns, it'll be interesting to see what the government does come out with and how the opposition looks at that framework. But to Dr. Ajoy Kumar, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, as well as Varun Kullar, thank you very much for your time. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the latest.